Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of Typewriter Talks. I'm Maureen McDowell, the founder and executive director of Keep St. Pete Lit. And today we have with us Brian Petkash. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Brian is a Tampa Bay author, and he has a book of short stories that was just released about a month ago. And so congratulations. This is kind of a crazy time for a book release, but
it is an unusual time, for many things.
Tell us a little bit about your book of short stories.
It's called Mistakes by the Lake. It's a collection of stories that center around Cleveland, Ohio. And it tries to get into the history of the city by setting each story in a different decade in its history. So I start in 1796 and 1797 when Cleveland was sort of discovered / founded. And then I move, and then I jump up to the 1920s, and then I have a story in every decade from then on up all the way through to 2013 is the last story. So I pull a lot of historical details and the richness of Cleveland's history as much as I can, and then kind of populate those eras and those events with these characters that I've created.
So were you led more by the historical aspects of Cleveland or from the characters?
You know, it was both. It was both, and I think when I started the collection, I didn't know it was going to be a collection when I started. I had this idea for what I thought might be a novel. It ended up being the capstone novella in the collection, which is the title track, Mistakes by the Lake. And as I was working on that, I was getting my MFA at University of Tampa and just started writing other stories, as part of the work for that course, for that program. And I wrote a story in like the 1980s, but I didn't know I was putting a collection together that was going to be like this. And then I wrote another story that was maybe the early 2000s. And then when I was researching I think it was for the novella, I stumbled across like this weirdo history about Cleveland streetcars. They had a pretty large, extensive streetcar thing in Cleveland up until I think the 40s or 50s or 60s, maybe. I think it may have ended then. And I just became fascinated with it. And I saw this one little article about this trolley driver who kind of stole a trolley and went exploring the city because it was areas of the city he'd never been able to get to. And it was that story, I think, which ended up being set in 1928, that I really started to understand, okay, if this is going to be a collection, I already was starting to realize that the novella probably didn't have the legs to be a novel. And then I started realizing, okay, I have this historical thing here. So once I hit that story, I really started looking at the different decades, and then that kind of helped fill out the rest and help me get into them more. So I'd say early stories started a lot with character, and later stories really kind of were driven, or at least in tandem, coached by the historical research.
So, and the book kind of had a life of its own.
It did. It did.
Do you
listen to me?
Writing a good short story is very tricky. Like across the board, writers say it's not for the weak. So good on you for foraging into that wonderful genre that is underappreciated. I mean, a great short story stays with you. So is that the only form of, what are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on promoting the book, of course, as best as I can, given the nature of the times. That kind of led me to write these little behind the story essays, I guess you'd call them, for each of the 10 stories in the collection, just as a way to promote the collection. I don't think I would have done these had the sort of ability to promote the book had been sort of the normal route, of doing readings, and I had hoped to travel to Cleveland and attend some events there. So I started thinking about ways I could promote it. So I wrote these little essays for each of the stories that kind of peeks behind the scene a little bit of what I was thinking and how the process and how the story kind of came about. So, was working on those for a bit. And then I had started what I think, these are my famous last words, I think is going to be a novel. We'll see if it makes it. I'm about 60 or 80 pages into it. But I have not picked it up since before the pandemic, since before March. I haven't written anything new for it since then. So I'm hoping to re-engage that at some point, but I say that every week and have yet to get into it.
And you have a full-time job other than writing, correct?
I do, yes.
So what is your writing process with having a full-time job?
Well, right now, not really much of a process going on.
Yeah.
But before we were staying at home, I'd like to go to Panera or just a coffee shop of some place where I can go in the morning. Typically 3 or 4 days a week, I would get out in the morning, and I would, probably spend a couple hours writing before I'd come back home and then get to work. And I work from home, so there was some flexibility to that too that allowed me to do what I did.
I think it's important to realize, like, even when we're not writing, we're still writing. I think the intention's there, and who knows how this pandemic will inform the novel that you're working on. And even if we're not like down at the page, there's still like, when I, like with poetry, I say that all the time, like sometimes there's parts of a poem that I haven't lived yet. So I think that it's important for people to realize, like, I mean, you don't stay away from the page too long, but I mean, there are writers
Right.
that have gone like years between books because they just had to live a bit. So, and I mean, these are extraordinary times, So
They really are. And I've read.
Oh, go ahead.
I just was going to say, I've read numerous articles of various writers who, I mean, it's all allowed, right? I've read articles by some writers who are writing a lot right now, and I've read other articles by writers who can't write anything right now.
Yeah.
And it's all permissible, and I'm kind of just okay with things as they are. Again, I hope to get back to it soon.
That's interesting what you said about writing little essays of kind of behind the scenes for your book that has come out, and how you have to kind of think outside the box right now during these crazy times where you can't actually do a normal book release party, or you can't go and do readings, and you have to come up with new and kind of innovative ways to help promote your book. And I think that can really work to your advantage in the future, because if we do just have the traditional ways of promoting books, we don't necessarily feel the need to go out of our comfort zone a bit. And you putting a book out is like giving birth. So you're really like in the like recovery stage of getting a book out there. And I mean, I remember when my books come out, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's finally like out in the world, and I need to take a breather and like regroup. And so who are some of your favorite authors? Like who inspires you as a writer?
I just off the top of my head, as far as what, the ones that I think I go to see, that I just learned so much by reading what they do. Pat Conroy was probably one of the first like authors that I really kind of just fell in love with, as far as how he wrote, how rich his characters were. And then like by Dennis Lehane, I've learned so much from reading his work. Mm-hmm. Richard Price, I think, was a big influence on me. Roddy Doyle, Nick Hornby, Tibor Fisher, August Wilson, Flannery O'Connor, which I hadn't really read any of her stuff until I got into the MFA, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I been missing?
Yeah.
Her stories are just incredible, and just darn near perfect. Every one of those stories is darn near perfect. And classic wise, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Shakespeare, the novella Mistakes by the Lake is sort of a modern retelling of Henry IV. So Shakespeare has been a big influence. Sam Shepard, like his plays are just wonderful. And lately, kind of too, what comes to mind is what I've read lately or what I'm reading. Like I read, I think it's David Mitchell. He wrote the Bone Clocks, and he wrote Cloud Atlas, and
That's on
And
my
his, I
red
just,
pile.
yeah, and there are certain authors. I mean, most of the authors that I've listed are ones that I read them, and I'm amazed at how they make it look so easy when you know inherently as a writer that what they pulled off is not easy.
Yeah.
And you know, David Mitchell, the mind-bending worlds he creates and the characters he creates are they just blow me away. And I'm currently reading Murakami's 1Q84, which is also just mind-blowing as far as what he does in building this world, and how he's able to tease this stuff across, like, what is it, 1,300 pages or something like that. Like, I couldn't fathom writing something of that length. But yeah, I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but those are a bunch that really I think I look at again and again.
What are some of your major themes that you return to in your work?
I think I play around a lot with dualities and juxtapositions and divisions and you know, the opposing ideas, and not so much good and evil, but you know, hope and despair, and fantasy and reality, and that sort of thing. And I think I also explore loss and tragedy and how those impact a person, and within that hope, or within that tragedy and loss, I think exploring how people become who they are. You know, how does someone become this person in the world? And obviously characters are fiction, but we're trying to make them as real and breathe as much life into them as we can. But you know, what makes them tick really, and what makes them present in the world as they are. And then with all those, really trying to find some level of hope amidst the tragedy, amidst the shattered dreams, that there is still the possibility of transcending all of that.
Yeah. Is there, like, so you were in Cleveland, Ohio, and now you're here in very eclectic Florida. Are you finding that the change of location affecting your writing?
You know, as much as I love and miss Cleveland, and it is where my writing goes to right now. I've lived in Florida now 20 years.
Oh, you've been here that long. Okay. Yeah.
I have. Yeah. So if anything, it moved me toward writing. I don't think I was really writing anything 20 years ago. So in some strange way, it kind of helped prod some writing to occur. Mm-hmm. But I'm still going back. I find myself going back to even the novel I'm working on right now is set in Cleveland. And I'm still mining that city for quite a bit.
Interesting. Yeah, we had a writer on here, Chelsea Catherine, and she says that all of her books are kind of informed by a sense of place. And wherever she's living, that really is like the setting of her book. And I think she's got 2 books now that are set here. And I'm like, where are you going to move away? And she's like, I don't know. Feel like there's plenty to write about with Florida and all of our, I mean, there's no other state like us.
No, there really isn't, which is good and bad. Talk about dualities.
Yeah, especially right now. My goodness. So where do you go for inspiration? What gets you unblocked?
Man, great question. Sometimes research, which I know can also be an excuse for procrastinating actually writing, but sometimes those little tidbits or just a little detail or a little fact about something, a place, an era, an event, kind of unsticks something or triggers something that I can riff on that. I can see how that plays into this character, and that gets me to the page sometimes. Just moving about the world, you know, just seeing, observing people, eavesdropping, listening to what people are talking about. Occasionally the news, although probably not so much nowadays. That's not the most inspiring place to go for ideas. And then reading, just reading others' work, and both reading something that might be aligned with what I'm working on, the project I'm working on, but also something that's completely different. You know, reading, you know, Cloud Atlas, for instance, Mitchell's book, just kind of getting away from your own genre or your own whatever topic you're on can sometimes help parallel process your thing while you're reading this other work.
Yeah, he's very.
And ultimately, really, I'm sorry?
No, I was thinking David Mitchell's very different than Pat Conroy. Prince of
Very
Time,
much so,
very
yeah.
different than Cloud Atlas. But yeah, go ahead.
Yes, very different. And ultimately, you know, you do have to sit down and write. And sometimes that will get me unstuck, is just sitting down and getting a couple words and getting a sentence and getting a couple sentences. And then, you know, before I know it, I've gotten a couple pages that I don't think I knew I had in me until I sat down.
So what would be your, what would you tell your younger writer self if you could go back in time?
Man, I think I had a delusion that, again, when you read these works by these authors, and poets, just any written piece, you know, they make it look so easy, and they make it look like it just kind of happened and came out of them in this sort of whole cloth kind of, here it is. Or that they at the very least knew from the get-go how they were going to plot, and the character was gonna, you know, the arc of the character and what their themes were. Like that they kind of had this knowing from the start of, this is what I'm going to write, and I have it already in my head. It's just a matter of putting it on paper. Which is of course false. And I didn't discover, at UT's MFA, they shared with us the essay by Barthelme about not knowing, and how, you know, when it comes to writing, dealing with the not knowing of what we're doing when we approach the page, of what this character is going to do, or what they're going to say, or what the theme is, or what the plot is. Just approach the page just kind of open to whatever issues forth. I think that would have been nice to know at a younger time in my life. I think I might have tried writing a bit more earlier on if I knew that that was the process, that there really is a not knowing to the process that is actually quite refreshing and exhilarating to kind of, you know, sit down and, where's it going to go right now? I have no idea. You know, you might have an idea, but even then, you know, how it flows as you sit down to actually write, and as the characters do their thing, it can go off in a myriad unpredictable directions. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the reader goes on a ride too, and the reader might have a completely different experience than you had, and it's just, that's what's so cool about reading and writing. There really is nothing
very
else.
Much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true.
So what would be your holy grail of writing advice?
John Dufresne is one of my first writing mentors. He teaches at FIU, I think, but he occasionally will teach at the Eckerd Writers in Paradise. And that's where I first, I think 10 or 11 years ago, he was our workshop leader. And so I learned a lot from him, and he's got some terrific writing books. And the one bit of advice that he gave, that I'm sure probably others have given too, is you have to sit your butt in the chair and write. While I totally agree that when we're not writing, things are being worked out, you know, behind the scenes, in the back of our mind, we're processing things, and things are happening that will help us when we sit down to the page. But, you know, thinking about writing isn't writing, researching about, you know, what you're going to write isn't writing, writing books isn't writing. The only thing that's writing is actually sitting down in the chair and writing. So I definitely value that admonition as an inspiration to get me to sit down and get some writing done.
So you said you had a couple, something to share with us. Is this from your current book?
It is. It's from Mistakes by the Lake. So I can read a short scene from the novella, which is the title track, as I said, Mistakes by the Lake. This is a modern retelling of Henry IV, and this scene, I'm not sure you even need to know much about what's going on because it's early in the novella. It introduces some characters and some different goings on. So I'll go with that. Pepe's Pizzeria had been in the same paint-flaking wood frame building for over 30 years. It was Fat Vinny's Pizza Palace before Pepe bought it, but other than the name change, everything had stayed the same. Wood-paneled walls, dark, coupled with the one bulb table lamps and two high windows, the room feels like a morgue. The furniture is a mashup of a single hard plastic booth stolen from a failed Burger King, and wobbly tables with chairs that a blind man could see don't match. On one corner table rests a deck of cards, a pen, a pad of paper, an endless game. The decor is an odd mix of old bowling and softball trophies, plastic flowers, and pictures of those who had eaten the infamous 30-inch Pepe special. Numerous drop-ceiling tiles are swollen and stained with water damage, maybe hold a bloated rat or two in their bowl-like bellies. A gumball machine sits beside the counter untouched, filled with candies that are diamond hard. A game of chance. For $1, customers can move a claw around, try to grasp some shitty prize, rest in one corner. In another corner, an old TV is cabled to an older VCR. It shows old movies, the showings only interrupted if the Indians or Browns or Cavs are playing. No Indians today, just some black and white called The Third Man. All of that's nothing compared to the carpeting. From the entrance and throughout the dining area, a thin blue-gray and heavily stained carpet covers the floor. 30 years of dropped pizzas, spilled drinks, leaked water, bloodied cuts, mishandled diapers, and who knows, maybe a dead body or two gives the place both character and smell. Large floor mats cover some of the stains and gather the snow and slush and salt in the winter. The largest one in front of the counter holds the old Fat Vinny's name and logo. Pepe had spray painted Pepe's Pizzeria over it, but the change had long since worn away. After the donor killed Sally, Mom used to make decent money dancing in the flats. But when the flats died, and she got work at the front counter of the Velvet Line, making a fifth of what she used to pull dancing. Gramps doesn't work and the pills are expensive. I earn minimum wage plus delivery tips. With the deconstructing dry, this is it. I spend a few hours folding boxes, sweeping, avoiding Pepe's office, not serving a soul. Pepe blames the economy. I blame his filthy habit. Whatever. I worry about Mom and Gramps, about how we're going to keep the house, about how we're going to survive. The third man shows some fingers clawing uselessly through the underside of a manhole cover, no escape. I am taken by the one dude nodding to the other to shoot him when the phone rings, startling me. It's old Mrs. Brood. She and her husband live over on Dearborn, near our first house, the one the donor had torched. Mom likes her. I think she's certifiably nuts. She always wears a tinfoil hat. If she doesn't, she says, she'll hear voices, do things. Don't know how her husband puts up with it. I want to do something right for once, at least feel like I can, like I'm capable. I make a pretty awesome pizza for Mrs. Brood. Washed hands, plenty of cheese, a freshly opened pack of pepperoni, a crust cooked through, the cheese with hints of bubbly crispness. Even the box is perfectly constructed. I slide the pizza in the warmer, go outside, and strap the package onto Sally's bike. A homemade board and bungee hold it above the front tire. It's late, and with the traffic thin, it doesn't take me long to get to her house. She opens the door a crack, the chain strangling the door. Her tinfoil hat is crooked. Strands of white hair poke out like a scattered nest. She hands me 2 bills, then theatrically drops 2 quarters into my hand. My tip. Cheap nut job. I clench the quarters, the edges dig into my palm hard, but I am distracted. I don't know many words, but I think even if I knew all words, there aren't enough to describe the smell coming out that door. Imagine leaving the garbage out too long. Imagine a squirrel crawling in and dying. Imagine that squirrel rotting for 3 or 4 weeks. Imagine a few dogs taking dumps in that same bag. Imagine letting that sit for 3 or 4 weeks. This smell that came out of Mrs. Brood's house, not even close. I hold the pizza up high near my nose, eyeing her, eyeing me. Not only do I not know how to get the pizza to her through a 2-inch gap, what was I going to do, slant it to her? Now I need the pizza smell to mask that other smell. I don't want to part from it. We are at a standoff, me and Mrs. Brood. My pizza? The box muffles my response. I don't want to smell, know how to. I push the pizza toward the door, show her the problem. She sighs, closes the door, works the chain, opens the door wide, takes the pizza, and bathes me in the smell of worse than old garbage, rotten squirrel dog shit. I throw up on her slippers, which are on her feet. I wipe my mouth, give her the money back, and head to Pepe's. I think about what will happen if I lose this job. Think about deconstructing more, squaring off against other crews, talking to G's uncle, maybe negotiate a higher payout. Think about other jobs me and the guys can pull. Think about Mom and Gramps. I stopped twice to throw up on the side of the road. But Mrs. Brood didn't call. A few days later, a UPS guy pukes on her shoes, the slippers must have been done, and calls the cops. I think Mrs. Brood will be arrested. Her not reporting a long-dead husband sounded illegal, but she is simply left alone.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad. I was thinking my gag reflexes would kick in right here. Like, oh, the visuals.
Good, affecting writing. I like that.
Oh my God, the visuals. But even like the way you described the pizza parlor, I'm like, I've been into some of those places around here, you know, with the tile.
Yeah.
The bloated rat. Like, just, oh my goodness. What detail.
Yeah.
And even her name, Mrs. Brood, brooding in her trash pit. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing with us. And
oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And keep writing. Good luck with this crazy pandemic. And you know, you just you just got to keep going, and you will. You'll find your groove again once I mean, this is crazy time.
And I like what you said earlier too about it is a crazy time, and I like what you said earlier about how, you know, sometimes you just have to go out and experience things before you can be brought back to the page. So I'm just kind of trusting that as part of the process too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're a writer, like you're consciously a writer, you're always a writer. I think once you make that decision, and even if you do step away for a while, it's going to hit you like a lightning bolt one day. You'll be doing the weirdest thing, taking out the trash or who knows what. And then all of a sudden, like a line will come and you'll go, oh my God, that's it. And you'll rush back. And it's just trusting the process and, you know, trusting the writing to show back up for you. It's not easy though. I can't think of, it's one of the worst feelings, like for me personally, just like to not feel inspired, but you know.
It is tough. It's tough, but trusting it, you're right. I think that's part of it. So
yeah, let the magic come back. So thank you so much. Yeah. I'm Maureen McDowell, and we are Keep St. Pete Lit. You can go to keepstpetelit.org. We do have online writing classes, and this is our 13th episode of Typewriter Talks. So we have episodes 1 through 12 on our website and also on Facebook and YouTube. If you wanna, we've gone across the board already with all different types of writers to kind of show you how the writing process is varied and different, and we all have our own approach. So that's the exciting part about being a writer, you know, but you're the only one that can do what you do. So that's why it's important to get your words on the page. Once again, thank you so much, Brian, and have a good week, everyone. And we'll see you next time.